13th of July at 4:29 p.m. here on Harstine Island in Washington, United States of America. Welcome once again to our Cosmic Journey, the Dev and Design podcast chronicling our path towards making the world's best astrology software. I'm designer Jake. He's engineer Trey. Hello, Trey.
Hello, Jake. That was great. You didn't flub it at all.
Yes, I didn't flub the intro at all. Couple things we have to take mention of that has happened in the news. We're recording this on Saturday. On Friday, the most shocking trial end that I have ever seen ever happened with
Wild.
Alec Baldwin having his case dismissed with prejudice due to a discovery violation error from the prosecution, and this was a penalty for that. A prosecutor quit in the middle of the Brady hearing. It was a lot to take in on Friday. How did you feel on Friday from all that? I felt jingly myself.
Yeah, you were a little bit more involved in it than I was, or watching it more sort of in real time. But afterwards, I was really I just had a lot of questions because we watched some news coverage and stuff, and I was just like, it's an interesting thing to look at kind of how the U.S. legal system works, and there's a fair amount of inside baseball related to this court case, but I think it's interesting to look at just from a what kinds of stuff can happen.
Yeah.
And what sometimes seemingly very small things can have a very outsized impact. The difference between Alec Baldwin spending 18 months in jail and Alec Baldwin getting to go away scot-free was basically like somebody deciding that some rounds didn't look like other rounds.
So a piece of evidence going in and being cataloged under different numbers. As simple as that. Crazy.
Yeah. Wild. Yeah, it was really wild.
It was wild. That wild week in the justice system does not really resemble the wild week we had in our creation of what we're calling our retro future. So again, I don't have a
Wait, you weren't going to mention anything about Gene Simmons?
Not Gene Simmons, Richard Simmons.
No, sorry. Richard Simmons, not Gene Simmons.
Gene Simmons is not dead. Richard Simmons just died as well. Legendary fitness personality, died at 76, probably today, I'm assuming. This is according to NBC News. Gene Simmons, alive and well. Richard Simmons, sorry about it. But you know what? He lived enough of a fruitful life. Back to the agenda, though. Again, I have a game, not a question per se for the check-in. We have a tech demo today that's going to show a retro symbol and some panels. Trey will get into that stuff. And then I have a design demo that is around the details, that is in point placement. But before we get to that, Mr. Henry, we're going to play, today we play Rhyme Time. And
my favorite game.
It's your favorite game. So the way it works is I'm going to give you the number of syllables for a 2-word rhyming phrase. So for example, if the answer is thunder blunder, I would say weather crash whoopsie, and I think this is the same one that I gave you last time. Weather crash whoopsie, thunder blunder, and I would say 2 syllables, and you would of course be like thunder blunder, and you would look amazing because what's going to happen is there's going to be a lot of time for you to think, and then there's going to be the edit. We're going to cut all that out. But for those of you at home, this 2-word phrase that I'm going to give you is there's one of the words that is in this will be talked about today. And so that's a little bit of a clue to you.
Ooh,
so you don't have to... Little clue. You don't have to answer it yet. And I would caution you, Mr. Henry, to listen very closely to what you say and to what I say, because the 2-word phrase is each 3 syllables, needed future success. So 3 syllables, needed future success. Just why don't you keep that in your mind's eye for a little bit while we go into the rest of the demos today. How about that?
I love it.
Good. I love it too. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you were up to this iteration?
Oh yeah, there was actually quite a lot that went into this cycle. It was really pretty productive. We've got some really good stuff to show. Am I just digging right into the demo at this point?
Well, why don't you explain a little bit of what you cared about this demo before we get right into it?
Are you trying to get me to say the word? It's a
No,
two-syllable
no, I'm
word.
not trying to get you to say the word.
Oh,
What I'm trying to get you to do is explain what. Here, let me go back to 2UP. This is ridiculous. All right. Trey had said, look, we've done a lot of back end changes, and I would like to show some front end stuff. And there were some things that were designed, but that were, like not. There were some things that were designed that were ready for the back end, and there were some things that are designed that were ready a little bit for the front end. Those things were kind of disjointed. They don't really make up a kind of composed plate, but they're really important things. There, I introduced your work for you.
okay. No, that was
So now,
that was beautiful. Okay,
would
now
you
now I
like to
understand what you
talk
were going
about
for.
those things? Yes, I'm sorry. I just wanted you to do. I like. By the way, everything that Trey thinks that everything I've laid is a trap, and he's not wrong to believe that sometimes I'm laying traps for him or that I'm trying to guide him down a path. Literally, I just was like, just tell me what you did and why you did it. It's fine. So why don't you share your screen and show us some stuff? And what are your thoughts about all
Yeah.
that stuff?
So we'll start out with the sort of like less sexy, at least from the front end perspective. One of the things that we did was we simplified how we track names internally for natives. We used to have a whole bunch of fields, and it was a little bit complicated and convoluted because we had fields that would represent, sort of like the different parts of somebody's like maybe birth given name, and then we had sort of like a given name or a nickname, and then an anonymous name and whether or not they're anonymous, and it was just a little bit difficult to kind of like wrap your head around, and there was just lots and lots of fields. And so Jake in the design updated all of this to kind of like simplify that model. And so what I'll show is just what this model looks like basically at this point. Just get everything here. So if I'm just getting natives that are currently in the database on my machine. So here you can see that we have Jake's native record, which has a name full, which is his full birth given name. It's just whatever would be there. So it's not separated out into separate fields at this point. It's just that could be really kind of anything, which is great because it provides the most flexibility. And then there's a known by name. And if there's a known by name, then we will use the known by name. Otherwise, we'll use the name full. There's also this name anon, which it would be for data that like native data that we would ingest from the outside world, that like perhaps stuff that we get from
It's like research
open
data.
source databases.
It's not.
Yeah,
It's not
like
a prominent
research data
person.
for
Yeah. It's like people
yeah,
who
exactly.
were in like a victim of a tsunami or people who were, whatever. There's always
Yeah.
some kind of special thing. I've seen everything from beautician to like shipwreck survivor for anonymous
Yeah,
data.
exactly. Yeah. So those things when they get pulled in, then there's an anonymous data. If they're anonymous, we use the anonymous name. So all of that is just, you can see me here. It's much easier to understand and to see, and the slugs now generate from the right thing. So if everything is basically using the same thing to get the same like name data. So the same
Nice.
algorithm is being used for everything. Okay, so that was a long-winded way of saying we cleaned up names. The next thing that we have that I have to show you, dear viewer, is we have a I've shown moving through time a bunch over the last couple of cycles. I'm just using the hotkeys right now to move through time. One thing that we were missing in this was the ability to go back to the current time. So I just hit the N key to go back to the current time. You can also see that we have, it's in the Cosmic Console, still not styled yet. Yes, we know. It'll get there. So anyway, so now, if you're kind of scrubbing around through time and doing that whole thing, you could just hit N to go back to go back to now.
Nice.
So that was great. We had that in there before, but it was kind of missing most recently. I also wired up this button, by the way. It doesn't do exactly the right thing. It just does the cast form right now, but just another thing. So okay.
Can you take a look at? It looks like I think that's. I can't remember if it's Uranus or Neptune down in. Can you go back for a second?
No, we're gonna do that one in a second.
Oh, sorry. Okay, fine.
Try to jump ahead. Um, so another thing, so we're looking at the cast chart here, or sorry, the cast chart form here. So we've already showed this a bunch, but you'll notice that there is now a time zone listed here. So this is great because, for one thing, it actually shows you the time zone. So based on the date and time. So for example, if I come here for this date and I just go up by month, you'll see that it just moved from EDT to EST to compensate for standard time or daylight time in there somewhere between October and November. I don't know when EST changes over, but
we have a
somewhere in
database
there
that
anyway.
tells us when, and that's what's
Yeah,
important.
exactly. And that's what's important. So yeah, so we and this all like updates correctly. But the other kind of cool thing here is that you can now select UTC if you want to um, if you don't necessarily want to use the time zone for the location will still be used for getting the for rendering the houses and so forth. But the time that will actually be used will be based on the UTC. So this is really useful in some cases where you might have you might not know, it might be like an older date, or it might be like kind of unknown, or you might not you
Yeah.
might not really know like what time zone you should be using. So being able to enter into UTC was something that always needed to be there, but was not in
And
there.
this sets us up really well to also do other, I guess we would say, ancient time zones. Those things didn't exist. So we have the idea of UTC, but we also will eventually do UT, which is universal time, and probably
Mhm.
LMT, which is local mean time. However,
Yeah,
that drop down right now only shows UTC and the time zone if we know it for the location that you have. But we will do
yeah,
more things depending on how they're needed.
yeah, yeah. So it's just continuing to kind of fill out the sort of in a lot of ways kind of normal expected behaviors, but doing it in a way that just is like really nice and well integrated. And
Yeah.
it's really hard to do this stuff well, as we've said many times in the past. So
Yeah. Time is
that's really
hard.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, time is super hard. Fortunately,
Feel
we have
free
a
to
really
look
good
back.
framework.
Feel free to look back at that episode where we've complained about time in the past. You can look up there
Yeah,
for that one.
exactly.
All right. Back to you, Mr. Henry.
Okay, so now let's go to Jake's chart for a second. Anything you want to point out about your chart?
Well, if you take a
Jake's
look
cast.
at that first house where we have Saturn that is sitting in Virgo, you'll see there, especially now that I'm probably going to do a zoom in on it. Oh, you did
Oh,
a zoom
look,
in on
I
it.
zoomed.
Wow. Look at that beautiful retrograde symbol that we have in there.
Yeah.
I love that
So
retrograde
yeah,
symbol.
yeah, it looks really good. So now you can see Pluto retrograde here. You can also see Jupiter retrograde, which we had to do a little fidgeting in order to get the retrograde
Zoom in
to
on
like
that
actually
one.
work good. Oh, there we go.
Nice. Yeah, we had to kind of
Very,
mess
very
around with
nice.
it.
Yeah, I can also show it in. I added some variants into the firmament, so you can see these are like really super tiny little ones.
Firmament. You'll notice
Firmament.
that the north node and the south node don't have retrograde symbols. Can you explain, Mr. Henry, about why we don't put retrograde symbols on the north node and the south node, unlike every other piece of astrology software?
Yeah. So it's probably important to point out that there are very slight differences between the two most common ways of calculating the north and south nodes. And there's what's called the true node, and then what's called like just the normal like north and south node calculation method. One is basically like an average, and then one is also another kind of averaging. It's just tighter.
Yeah.
And so between those two, you have you might see different ways of those things. Like they might be like 1 or 2 degrees apart, but they're always very, very close together. And the nodes move in a retrograde fashion, just always. And so it's kind of pointless to really show that. And now one like I think true node will sometimes be direct for the nodes, which is kind of it's just because of how these calculations work and like a slight bit of wobble. It doesn't actually mean that the nodes are going direct or the nodes are going retrograde. The nodes are just always moving in the direction that they're moving. So if you're looking at other software and it's showing that the nodes are in retrograde, that's because the nodes are always in retrograde.
And you could
That's
probably
just the
hear from
direction
our
they move.
voice. You can probably hear from our voice how annoyed we are about this. And this is probably good that your world-class astrology software makers are annoyed by what we consider to be bad astrological decisions by other people. Okay, back to your regularly scheduled
Okay.
program. Go ahead, Mr. Henry.
Yeah. Okay. So last thing on my list, which should be a nice segue into what you're going to talk about for the design, is because this is laying the foundation for being able to put
You're
point placement.
Look
in.
at you being very judicial about all of this. I appreciate that. You to lay the foundation. Love it.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a little pill here, which you probably noticed that I was conveniently ignoring.
That is not the
Uh,
design, but that's fine.
Yeah, I don't. Well, I didn't think we had a design. Do we have a design?
Well, we'll see that in here in a little bit.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Well, I'll update this to match the design. I just threw something on there just to basically like have something to actually be able to click on. But you can now hide the panel. I don't know how that animation is coming through, by the way. It might be a little.
It looks
choppy,
good
but
for me.
It's very smooth on my screen.
Yeah. Nice job.
And yeah, thanks. And this basically paves the way for us to have some right-hand panel details.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the right hand. Unless you're not no, you're finished because I can see your screen.
No, I'm done.
Let's talk. Let's talk a little bit about the right hand panel. So, I showed many cycles ago. Here, let me go to my solo. I think that helps out. So I talked about many cycles ago. You'll see it right up there in this episode up there. This idea of point placement, and when you click on a point, what do you end up seeing? What is the most important points? No pun intended. Like the most important metadata and core content that you would show somebody if you wanted to like inspect a point. Like this whole, you're going to see this here in a second, but like if you click that retrograde Saturn, it should show you something kind of interesting. What you're seeing here is, again, the weirdo design Duplo mode type of chart. So, Mr. Henry, this chevron is designed, and we have this chevron for you. So you click this chevron, and I didn't do any animations here, so just go with me. You click this chevron, you go down here, and you see that the left drawer is collapsed, and now you just see, excuse me, you just see the chart. Let's say that I wanted to.
That's cool. So we can actually animate. I just realized that we can animate that because it's overlaying the panel when the panel is open, but then when the panel closes, it's on the other side of the panel, and we can actually animate its position movement as well, so that like basically as the panel closes, it'll like pop out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly right. I click on this retrograde Saturn here that is sitting in the first house that's in Virgo, and I get a detail panel on the right hand side. Okay. So, a couple things I'm going to tell you about that I'm not excited about. First of all, it looks a little packed in here. I'm not excited about that. Number two, I made this X very quickly, and I think the X is too fat. We'll fix that too. But
the X
what
and
I can
have
do...
something in common.
So you're so nasty to yourself, sir. Wait, where are you? You're below me. You're so nasty to yourself. All right, there you go. But as we showed here, yeah, fine. This is just giving you the symbol that it's retrograde. You've seen that before. That's over in the chart over here, which is highlighted now over here.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. And you see in more detail what the placement is. Oh, 1240. Whoopsie doodles. Let's fix that right now. This cannot be done in the software. This is a design thing. 1240. There we go. House 1. Okay, and then you get the speed graph. So it's retrograde, but it's moving towards a direct station. That's what this is showing here. And it's showing you that it's still moving at a pretty good clip in retrograde. And then it shows you essential dignity. Your domicile lord and the relationship to that, the exaltation lord. Yes. Oh, by the way, none of these symbols are actually true for Virgo. So, don't come at me. Don't at me on this one. I get it. These are not correct. They're just here to show you something. The Bound Lord. Yep, the Bound Lord gives you, it's the same as this. Great, we'll do a little highlight here. Triplicity Lords, and given that this is an evening chart, that this will show you the Nocturnal one, then the Diurnal one, then the Common one. The Deacon Lord. Detriment doesn't have a Lord. Fall Lord. We don't say Fall Lord. Face Lord. We're not using the word face.
I wanted to say Face Lord. I just want the viewer to know that I wanted to say Face Lord, and Jake said that we had to say Deacon Lord.
Yeah.
I protest.
We are not over here. We are not saying Face Lord at all. And then what we have here is something called the speed graph. So the speed graph will show you over time how from like the ring date, which is, presumably my birthday, to like what was before and what was after, what is happening with this point. And because it is a fairly unique type of visualization, it's probably something that we're going to ask you to pay for. You can tell. How can you tell that we want you to pay for it? We use the gold button, the gold bar button. So, and we tell you to unlock, explore planetary speed beyond just numbers, like every other piece of astrology software does. Unlock the speed graph now. And then we will do something very similar with the aspectarian, or the aspects that are kind of just recently separating, or that would be upcoming for this point. So this probably won't be a standard aspectarian. It will be another visualization.
No, I love it. I really love the direction that this is going. I think it looks great. It's conveying a lot of good, important information, like sort of right out of the gate. It's probably not showing everything that somebody's going to want to see. So, there'll be more stuff coming.
Just to know that there is more stuff that's going to go down there, and that it's going to be interesting and amazing. And we'll be expanding over time, because people will probably ask us for more stuff, and then we'll probably put that stuff in there.
Yeah, it's also important to point out too that it's this is showing traditional sort of Hellenistic data. So it's basically prioritizing, showing you like essential dignity and
right.
Like accidental dignity and things like that you would care about.
It goes essential dignity,
astrology.
and then stuff around like the movement and the kind of condition of the planet, and then it goes into accidental dignity. If this is modern astrology, we'll probably move accidental dignity to the top. Basically, those two things, here, I'll show you. These two things here will swap. So this will probably go to the bottom, that will go to the top, because accidental dignity in modern astrology is so much more important. That kind of thing.
Yeah. And actually, probably essential dignity would just not even be shown, because I think in most modern astrology, primarily you care about things like aspect, just relationship to other things, and like the ideas of like the domicile or detriment, fall. All these things are really sort of traditional astrology.
Well, that's enough of the demos then.
Okay, bring back the clue, because
we have said this word. We have said this word. Needed future success. So I was going to make it, by the way, that this screen would have a kind of ghosted out version of your face. Here, actually, I can do that. What I'll do is this. Here, I'll do this. All right, Mr. Henry, what do you think?
Viewer, whether your name be Carol or Heather or maybe Dan or maybe Jason, I'm just picking names out of the air. Like
these are just names. These are just
names. These are just names.
Dear viewer,
John,
what do you?
Dear viewer, why don't you help me out here?
Needed future success. I guess we're going to tell you later in the week. What do you want me to do with this?
No. We have to resolve it this episode. Oh my God, are you kidding me?
Okay, here's a clue. The word needed, we have said a word that is a synonym of needed several times during my demo.
I need another clue.
One more clue. The first letter of the word, the 3-syllable word that has a synonym to the word needed, that we have said over and over and over, is E.
Oh, I still don't know.
Yeah, so we've said it a bunch of times. What about future success? Think about that word for a second. That one starts with P. Your ability to manifest future success. It is your... Okay, last clue.
Okay.
All right. Not accidental dignity.
Essential potential.
Yay! It's your essential potential. Here, wait.
Good job.
There, I can even show you. Essential potential.
Essential potential.
Yeah. Very good,
Good
Mr.
job,
Henry.
viewer. We did it
Good
together.
job, viewer. I'm sure you had it before Mr. Henry did. We had tons of edits there of time for him waiting.
The viewer was screaming at the screen. Also, it took like 20 clues. You practically told me what the answer was at the end.
Basically. What should the viewer do to maximize and kind of manifest their essential potential, Mr. Henry?
Stop playing with the passive.
I like the slider.
You should enjoy some lovely time with your pets.
Yes.
Look at that handsome boy.
He's a very handsome boy. All right, you be well. Enjoy your pets. Have yourself a lovely weekend or whatever day you watch this video. We'll see you again very soon. We love you. Goodbye.
Bye.